Untangled Viners, welcome back to another episode of Untangled Vines, Redefining the Rules of Work. Today, we have a truly inspiring guest who has not only embraced remote work, but has made it her mission to empower individuals and organizations to thrive in this ever-evolving landscape. Our guest is none other than Ali Greene, a trailblazer in the world of remote work. In 2022 and 23, Ali was recognized as a top 50 remote accelerator and a must-follow remote work expert. Her belief in the transformative power of flexible work is not just theoretical, it's deeply personal. Remote work didn't just change her career, it changed her life, as you'll learn in this episode. From rolling out company benefits in Tokyo while savoring ramen to orchestrating organizational restructures from the beaches of Spain, Ali's unique perspective and solutions-oriented mindset have positioned her as a thought leader in the remote work sphere. She generously shares her wealth of experience in her book, Remote Works, Managing of Freedom, Flexibility, and Focus, published by Barrett Kohler and distributed it internationally by Penguin Random House. Just a small publication there. Ali doesn't just stop at sharing her insights through writing. She offers workshops designed to enhance remote work fluency, covering topics such as async communication, productivity, energy management, team accountability, and living remote values. If that's not impressive enough, Ali is also a sought-after speaker on a variety of remote work-related topics, ranging from Remote Work 101 to creating culture in virtual spaces. But it's not just about work for Ali. She's passionate about connecting with curious minds, exploring alternative ways of working, and building communities around remote work, travel, and those delightful work from home meals that we all love. So whether you're a remote work enthusiast or just curious about the future of work, Ali Greene is here to share her journey and insights. But before we get started, intro. Hey everyone, welcome back to Untangled Vines, Redefining the Rules of Work. Today, I'm extremely excited because we have Ali Greene here. If you aren't familiar with Ali Greene, you need to go to LinkedIn and follow her, and then also get her book. I can't talk today, but get her book, Remote Works, and start diving into the future of work. But Ali, we are so excited to have you here.
Hello.
And for you to be a part of the Untangled Vines community.
I'm super pumped. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So I know that you have a hard stop, so we're going to go ahead and dive into it so we can get as much information out of you as possible. But I do want to start kind of where you start with your remote work journey, because I know that you've mentioned on LinkedIn and other outlets that remote work changed your life. Could you share a specific moment or experience that truly highlighted the transformative power of remote work, where we can gain a better understanding of why you see remote work so importantly?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of people are talking about remote work still, which makes me really happy. But a lot of the conversations really do get sucked into this very professional debate. And I think we're losing the human side of things. And so for me, the why goes so much more in depth than just some of the headlines that we're seeing in the news in terms of remote work or return to office. And I think everyone has their own story of why remote work is meaningful to them. Perhaps it allows them more flexibility with childcare, or perhaps it allows them to spend more time with aging parents, or just ease of getting around and working when their energy is high. For me, my remote work why is love in a lot of ways. And it's not something I talk about very often, but I experienced what it was like to move to a new city because I got a really exciting job opportunity and I had to make all new friends. I had to find people I connected with and build a community from scratch. And it was a really challenging experience for me in my early days of my career. Flash forward many years later, I'm working remotely. I'm a digital nomad, and I actually met somebody who became, my partner in this journey we call life. And having a two passport relationship means for a lot of people in the world that you have to choose between the love of what you do, your passion at work, and your professional identity, or your love of, relocating to a new place because maybe that's where your partner has work or circumstances like that. And remote work for me means that you don't have to choose between these two loves. You can have your personal love and you can have your professional love as well. And I think that's really important as we start to be more open with everybody's why in a unique way.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I mean, you kind of touched on it in your own specific way, but then there's other aspects of it. We were kind of talking about this a little bit before we hit record. There's like those little idiosyncrasies that nobody talks about, which I was telling you. Like, I remember going into the office with a suit and tie on. It might be cold in the morning and then hot in the afternoon. You go for lunch and you're coming back sweating. The rest of the day you're uncomfortable because you can't change your clothes and that kind of stuff. What beyond love, what, as far as like the work environment, what really connects you to remote work?
Yeah. And I can keep using the symbolism of love here too and just like cheese it up. But really it's like I love the freedom and flexibility to choose when I'm going to be the most motivated for my work. And I know these like weird things that we don't talk about and as part of our daily routine that helps me get there. So I love yoga and I am not a morning person. And I really struggled with the work environment where I had to wake up, get to a yoga class, get home, shower, put on like my, work outfit and commute all the way to an office back in the day, all before 9 a.m.
Yeah.
That's rough. And now I get to go to yoga. And if I'm doing some work in my yoga pants beforehand, who cares? If
Yeah.
it's really cold outside and I walk home and I just want a quick pick me up, like that afternoon shower to make myself presentable before Zoom calls. It's like these things of just like giving people back their power to make decisions about their own little details in life. Like when do they work out? What gives them energy? How do they approach, fitness and health? And those things from a work aspect is so powerful for a company because don't you want your employees to be working when they're most mentally agile, when they're feeling happy, when they're motivated to get into their work, and allowing them to do their life things to get to that state of flow for work is really
Yeah.
cool. And so why wouldn't more leaders want to do that through flexibility? And remote work is that door for flexibility.
Yeah. And one of the things that I always go back to, and I think I have a question a little bit later on, so I don't want to jump too far ahead, but one of the words that I go back to as far as people opposing remote work is that they're losing control. Like if we think about a manager, they're losing control of being able to see if the person is in their seat, which doesn't equate to productivity. So it's this misalignment that happens in my opinion and what I've seen. You want to say something?
Just yes, definitely. It's
Okay.
it's this control and power versus trust and letting go.
Mhm.
That's a really interesting dynamic for humans in general. I'm sure we'll dig into that.
Yeah, and it actually segues into our first section, which is adapting to remote work culture. So, because I know that you give talks on remote work 101 and you help others learn how to create culture in virtual spaces, which is something that we're working on with Grapevine, our platform as well. But I wanted to start here and ask you, what are the key elements for successfully establishing and maintaining a positive remote work culture within a team or organization?
Yeah, I really like this question because even the word culture can be like a triggering word for a lot of people. Shout out to my people ops folks that
Yeah.
like know what I'm talking about when they have to really be clear about what this means. The way that I define culture is not so much how you socialize with your colleagues, but it's a set of standard operating behaviors. And the more that you can codify what standard operating behaviors are for your organization, the stronger it becomes, even if people aren't in the same space. And so
Mm.
you look at other forms of culture in the world outside of workplace culture, and you start to see what I mean by this. And so, shout out to any Taylor Swift fans, but Taylor Swift has like an amazing culture around her as a person and her as a brand. People are always on the lookout for Easter eggs and things that she posts on Instagram. There are certain symbols involved, like her friendship bracelets, and there's meaning in her words. And so if you really take like a sociological perspective on culture and apply it to the workplace, you're starting to see things like rituals, behaviors, symbols that mean something to your group of people, whether it's your team and organization. And I think that becomes really powerful when you're talking about remote work, because it's an emphasis on that you can do this in a virtual way. And the steps to get there is that you need to break down certain definitions on your team. For example, what does culture mean? What does communication mean? What are core work hours? What is productivity? These are all definitions that we think we all know. They're common words we use in the business world. But if you actually have everyone on your team define them, and there's 5 people on your team, you will likely get 5 different definitions. And so right there, you need to start with, what are we actually talking about? And from there, build on it. Setting clear expectations around each thing is the most basic remote work 101 that I would say. Expectations about everything. And also then from there, you can create boundaries. And that's where the power of remote work comes in. And through having that shared understanding, that's where trust comes into the picture. And trust is an important quality as we break through what we were just talking about, this power and control dynamic, to knowing that your team has this, they're good.
Yeah. No, there's so many things. And as you were saying, I was wanting to respond, but I didn't want to interrupt you. But it's so true. Like, I've done a couple of posts out there where I talk about this in a sense where the reason that I love remote, among other things, is that it stops a company being able to just get by. You know, like in the office, everybody can show up. You can have your 15-minute morning meetings. You can go to your water cooler. You can do all that stuff. That's great. But when is the last time in the office that you actually could name the core values off the hand, or you could name your
Unless they were
mission or
painted
your
on the wall.
exactly, yeah, they would be painted on the wall, and that's it. You pass it every single day. Over time you become like, you ignore it. And yeah, that's why I love remote, because it forces you to do the things that you were able to get away with in the office. And now that brings more clarity to frontline workers, employees, like, because I think as leaders, which kind of transition or segues into this next question, but as leaders, we often think that our team understands what we understand, but they're not meeting as often about the things that we're meeting on, as far as like, this is our strategy, this is what we're trying to accomplish, this is where we stand. So how can leaders foster collaboration, communication, and create a sense of community in a virtual work environment? Kind of
Yeah.
going off of what you were building up to, I think.
I think this is really, really key. And what you're talking about in terms of, oh, you can just get by in an office versus what happens when you shift to remote, is you need to be more intentional with remote work about all of these things. And so a quick anecdote there. Early on in my career, I worked in an office environment. And if somebody wasn't being responsive to a piece of a project that was holding me up, the advice that I got from my manager was just go walk over to their desk and ask them for it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that is not showing a value of accountability, which is quite important in a remote work setting. It's allowing
Mm-hmm.
people to get by because they're waiting for that, you know, physical like tap on the shoulder to be like, hey, where's the work, let's get going. And that
Yeah.
can actually hinder collaboration and communication because it's not building. Again, this goes back to the sense of trust. And so the way that I would advise leaders to foster this idea of collaboration, communication, sense of community, besides defining what all those mean to you, is to
Yes.
build it into the work processes itself. And that sounds quite boring to a lot of people,
Yeah.
like, oh, you're talking about work process, you're talking about structure. It's these basic building blocks that are the most important. And so when it comes to collaboration, things like, what is your process and structure at work so that people can work in the open? How are you
Mm-hmm.
documenting things? How are project management tools helping you create transparency? And then if it aligns with your values, how do you build in behaviors around asking for help or support and asking questions and offering feedback, offering insights as well?
Hmm.
Communication then can build off of that. What are the simple rules for how you communicate with someone? Is there communication within this project management tool? What does that mean? What does that look like? How often do you have meetings? These are the types of structures that a good leader will put into place for their team. And then as it relates to community, this is another one I think a lot of leaders get wrong and they get very nervous about when it comes to remote work, because people hear, oh, let's build a community, and they jump to Zoom happy hours and they jump to all these
Uh,
like really terrible, boring things that were fine when we were experiencing remote work under different conditions, but now it's time to get back into our lives. So I think about how can you create small moments often in the work itself and just rely on those big moments sometimes. And so it could be, just adding more personality into the project management flow. How are you being considerate of each other's vibe and the
yeah.
company's values?
Yeah, that brings up a good call out, because somebody might look at yourself and myself like we're building an entire company for remote and hybrid workforces, right? And you specialize in remote workforces, or like helping companies adapt to remote work, and they might get this misconception that, oh, you guys hate the office or you never want to be in person, and that's just not true. At least for me, I'll speak for me, and then you can come in. But like for me, I want to have those like quarterly offsites with my team once we get to that level. I like having that personal connection in person, but at the same time, I don't. I do think that there's a lie going around where you kind of touched on it earlier, where it's like you can't build relationships virtually. I don't think that that's true either. Like you mentioned Taylor Swift. How many people love Taylor Swift that's never met her?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's a virtual connection, right? I don't know if maybe that's stalkerish or something, but you get the point where it's like you can build these relationships virtually. My founding advisor, we didn't meet for probably 9 or 10 months in person, but we connected through Zoom, through Slack, through all these different channels, and then obviously we work together. So um yeah, what is your take on that?
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. And it's like also the word connection, like you look at, the Taylor Swift example, you can connect to the music. You can
Yeah.
connect to what it means to you in your life. There is a form of connection there. And so, really breaking down what connection looks like. There's connection to yourself, there's connection to your local community, there's connection to your interests and your hobbies, there's connection to the work and is it meaningful. There's
Mhm.
lots of different angles to go with that. And then speaking to the kind of in-person versus virtual, debate, remote doesn't mean that you're isolated and you're sitting at home not talking to anybody. And so for me, it actually expands the definition of coworker. I
Mm.
run a weekly co-working session with people that do completely different things in different industries than the type of work that I do. And we get together and we all talk about, what are the top wins that we want to work on that day, like what's on our plate. Maybe we'll find ways to support each other or question what that person's working on and really help them. And then we hang out at a bakery, we get some good treats, and we get our work done. And it feels very
Yeah.
like lovely to mix socializing within my local community and being productive with my work. At the same point in time, um, there's been many an offsite that I've planned, especially during my time at DuckDuckGo, but also
Mhm.
personally doing retreats for remote workers and thinking through what is this experience? What is unique about being in person that we can't replicate virtually? And those are the special big moments sometimes that I'm referring to is, what does that look like? How do you come together? One of my absolute favorite memories of that was a co-workation I planned in my early days at DuckDuckGo, where a group of us, nobody was really on the same team, nobody was really in a direct line of management. We all traveled to Japan together because we had an employee who lived and worked in that time zone. And it was a huge wake up call for what this person's life is like when they sacrifice
Mm.
sleep in order to attend certain synchronous meetings, in how they manage to balance asynchronous communication. And everybody was able to learn from each other. And we were able to bring that back to the culture as well.
That's good. Yeah. That's what I keep saying it. That's what I love about remote work. But it, I mentioned this too, is remote work allows you to tap into other cultures without actually going there. for example, I work, like, our development team is based out of Pakistan. The CEO of that company is in London. My founding advisor is in Canada, and the people that I work with for another gig is in the Americas, right? And so, and the other positions that I've had, I've been able to connect and collaborate and learn their culture, learn their personality, and realize that we're not that different if we actually speak to one another and take a moment to understand. So yeah, I'll try to stop saying that's what I love about remote work as we continue.
Theme of today, this is everything we love about remote
Yeah.
work. But it's so true. And even if you're not just talking about the individual employee's experience, like, yes, 100% to everything. And that's great for a company because you're getting so many
Yes.
different perspectives about how is our product or service being interpreted in this local community? What does this look like? How are people talking about these issues here? And it makes the product stronger as well, almost regardless of what the product is. If you can expand user insights just by having a cross section of different backgrounds of your employees and different lived day-to-day experiences of your employees, that's a really awesome way to create a lot of like fun, creative tension to be successful.
Yeah, 100% agree. Um, this might be a segue, I'm not sure. Uh, but as part of like you helping remote workers and building those virtual spaces, can you share a success story from your journey or from a company that you've worked with, highlighting the positive impact of embracing remote work practices?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about something that I think everybody still struggles with, because it's one of my pain points is when people think of remote work, it's very easy to just replicate work that happens in an office. What we've
Mm.
seen in the past couple of years, it means that a lot of people have too many meetings. Like, listeners,
Yeah.
raise your hand right now. Like, you have too many
Yeah.
meetings. It sucks. Your calendar's full. When do you actually have time to go for that like glorious, like late morning yoga class that I talked about? Here's the thing. Communication doesn't mean more synchronous communication. And so one of the success stories I had when I was managing a team, especially a team across different time zones, was trying to figure out that jigsaw puzzle of when do we meet? Knowing that it is important to sometimes have that live time together. And by default, like most people I'm sure that are listening today and most companies, we started with having an hour weekly meeting on the
Mm.
calendar. It was a stand up. We did a thing. Um, it wasn't very exciting, to be honest, and it was tiring for a lot of people, mostly me, because I
Yeah.
was digital nomad, and so I was always in different time zones, and I had to really like be on it for this meeting. And then I took a step back, and this is what I encourage people to do in a remote work setting: is take a step back and ask yourself, how does this suit us in our remote work context? What is
Mm.
the goal of this meeting? And because of that, in this particular situation, we were able to change, instead of having a 1 hour weekly meeting, to 2 meetings a month. One was
Mm.
20 minutes. It was to make sure that we had an opportunity to just check in with each other and to, have that social connection, but nothing too overwhelming. And just talk about highlights about what was going on that maybe needed a different, that special tone of voice that you weren't getting asynchronously. And
Mhm.
then we actually did a 90-minute meeting. So you're thinking, wait, this is a lot longer, but we only had it once a month. And that meeting was really an opportunity to dive deep into a topic that was important for our functional area that we really needed that dedicated time to get into, whether it's a learning
Mhm.
and development opportunity, whether it was really hashing out brainstorming for a complex project, and sharing the roles and responsibilities of that meeting so it was never a burden on any one person. And I think making that change was incredibly helpful. And we reduced the amount of time we needed each week to be in meetings. And so everyone was getting focus time back, but we increased the intentionality behind why we were doing that.
Yeah, yeah. You've mentioned it a couple times. Intentionality is the the key thing. I think, like, yes, everything that you said has to factor in too. So it's not like either or, but I think you have to start with intentionality whenever it comes to remote work, or you're just going to be scrambling all over the place. But
Someone
yeah,
has to count how many times me and Tam have it in the book because it's probably a lot.
Yeah, like I do have it on my list to read because I haven't read it yet. I'm sorry, but I do have it on my list because I'm very OCD with my book list. I have to go through it anyway. That's beside the point. But the intentionality is key, and then I lost my train of thought. I shouldn't have went on a little tangent there.
These are the tangents of everything. Why we
Yeah,
love remote work, and then it
but
just goes out like an
but
octopus.
but these are good though, because like I have a lot of meetings where yes, we focus on the business aspect of it or the objectives that we're trying to achieve, but then I also try to curate these moments, like you were talking about small wins or small moments, and it's like those little things like Ali, where are you at today? Like, which part of the world are you in? And then you get to learn a little bit about that. Or like, I have a dog. Her name's Zola Girl, and well, Zola. I call her Zola Girl, and she's a golden doodle, and like she's just the best. And so, if you knew that, then you can have a conversation about that where we're getting to learn each other. I call it beyond the squares. And so, like, you get to learn about that person, and the more that you learn about that person, I feel like the more connected you can be. And it doesn't have to be in person, like we were talking about. But then, whenever you do meet in person, you get to take it even further, right? So I don't know if that was on topic or not, but
I just want Zola Girl to make an appearance on the podcast now.
I know I need to. She is our mascot at Grapevine, so I'll show you later. But okay, this is a terrible segue, but I'm gonna go to section 2 so we don't run out of time. But we're talking about navigating flexibility in work arrangements. This is one that I'm still learning myself because I have been more 100% remote in most of my positions lately. And so as flexible work arrangements become more prevalent, how can companies strike that balance between flexibility and maintaining productivity?
Yes. So, number one, you'll probably like roll your eyes at this point. Define what flexibility means for you and your organization. Flexibility can be flexibility of location, it can be flexibility of time, it can be flexibility of how you navigate the processes at work. Flexibility means different things to different people.
Yeah.
Separate from that is the reason flexibility doesn't exist to the extent it should in organizations is because people are historically terrible at defining productivity. And so the way that you can make flexible work arrangements more prevalent is by getting better at defining what productivity looks like in your organization. So what are the objectives? What are the KPIs? What are your goals? What is the definition of done? And what are the milestones to get to done? If you outline all of those things, it probably doesn't matter how that happens.
Yeah.
And so there's like kind of the sausage versus how the sausage gets made. If it's delicious, who cares, right? Like
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. That's true. I was just gonna jump in for a second because that's the thing. It's not about like a lot of the phrase now is like it's not where we work, it's how we work. And I think that's what you're calling out here is like we proved ourselves in the pandemic that we could get as much done as possible. We've seen studies that show remote work does increase productivity, depending on which article and depending on who's saying it out there, which maybe is a whole nother podcast. But yeah,
I'm down
it's
for that one.
yeah, well, you heard it here first. She's gonna be back. But no, yeah, we should talk about that at another time because it is so. Actually, let's just do a little bit right here because it is so misleading. Like a lot of people they'll just read the headline. Like whenever Zoom was requesting their employees back in the office, it was within a 50-mile radius. If that's the case, then you have to be in the office a certain amount of time. It wasn't that like the headline was like the end of remote work is now. And it's like, so what is your thought? I'll stop talking and what is your thought about that?
Like the media has to sell stuff and headlines are grabby. Data is extremely nuanced, and depending on who's leading the study, there's ways that you can look for the answers that you want. And it's not a perfect system yet. That's why like I'm here and why I'm motivated to do what I do. If everybody was perfect with remote working and everybody was bought on board, there would be no growth mindset. And we're at like a critical moment right now where the headlines are distracting from the real work to get done. The real work to get done is how do we make people, teams, and organizations better at the skill set and the mindset to be able to work remotely and lean into time flexibility, working when you feel in the flow, leaning into trust around location flexibility, leaning into being more creative with the types of autonomy that people have in reaching their goal and not, micromanaging people. Because at the end of the
Yeah.
day,
Gosh.
we enter the workforce, we want to be seen as adults. And in a lot of work cultures, we're treated like infants. And I think that's the biggest call for help that we're seeing right now is hey, let us do what we're good at. Let us do what we're passionate about. It'll make the company better and it'll make us more happy. And I think everybody deserves that.
Yes, yes. Like selfish plug, like our mission at Grapevine is to make work more flexible, inclusive, and fulfilling for everyone. And that last part is the key. Like obviously we need to make it more flexible so people have more work-life balance or work-life harmony, depending on how you want to define it. Having that autonomy, having like you mentioned earlier, feeling like you have that control back like in your life. And it's also like just on the inclusivity part, like we've seen like people of color experience better outcomes whenever they work remotely, at least from the articles that I've read. We see that women benefit more from remote work. And so yeah, like that is what drives me too, is making work more flexible, inclusive, and fulfilling. Because like I really do, maybe you'll roll your eyes at this, I don't think you will, but some people will. I do think that it is a human right to enjoy your work, or at least have the option to find a way to enjoy your work. And it goes back to just being an adult. If you think about like whenever you were in high school or middle school or even like childcare, like the only difference is that in an office we drive ourselves to daycare instead of instead of
I've never heard that one before.
I'm impressed with myself. I just came up with it, but it kind of is true, right? Because you're going there to have somebody to tell you to do something, which is your manager or your leader. And like, yeah, I think it's like if you treat people, I mean, Atlassian is a great example of this, right? Like they're pioneering the future of work, and like they treat their people like adults, and I mean, I think it's like $60 billion company. Like if they can do it, then these other companies like Google, Facebook, all that, like it's kind of a similar situation. And so what is your agenda? You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's an aspect here too. Whenever I hear this line of thought, I hear a lot of pushback about the fact that there is a certain level of privilege that comes with access to a knowledge management type job anyway. So,
Yeah.
so one, I do want to sit here and recognize that there's privilege in the knowledge work that I've been able to achieve in my life. With that said, and maybe this is where I am too idealistic about what the future of not just work, but society can be. There's still ways to infuse flexibility in lots of roles. And so you see examples of, hourly working type of shifts that have to be done in person because it requires a brick and mortar presence.
Hmm.
While I was breaking into my people ops career, I worked at a bakery. And so, yeah, you can't bake a cake unless you have the tools. Like you need the
That's true.
flour, you need the kitchen. So I had to be there. What you
Hmm.
can offer in terms of flexibility, even in those environments, is how do you utilize technology to do scheduling tools so that people that have certain obligations in
Yeah.
their life can be more transparent about the scheduling instead of one manager ruling what the week looks like for everybody else? How do you share your preferences? Maybe some people really do prefer coming in at the earliest hours of the morning, and some people really like to close up shop. Don't make
Hmm.
assumptions. You can also allow more autonomy and flexibility around how things get done. Of course, in my example with baking, it is an exact science. You have to follow a recipe, but maybe I can choose whether I bake the cupcakes or the cookies first. Like, why does all of
Yeah.
that need to be dictated to me? And so, again, I sit here feeling incredibly grateful for the type of work that I do and for how that really easily plugs into a remote work landscape. But I just think overall, how in any workplace can we create more trust and respect is really important to me.
Yeah, that does bring up a good point because yeah, I tend to forget to add that portion of it. Whenever I was starting to do like product validation and like post online for Grapevine, every once in a while, it wasn't a lot, but there was always that one person that would be like, yeah, for knowledge workers, but not for like hourly workers and that kind of stuff. But I agree. I think the overall, like whenever we talk about remote work or future of society, as you labeled it, it's we're just trying to make work better for everyone. And that is the goal. That is the outcome. And so maybe it's like the headlines that we were talking about where maybe people like myself are delivering it a little bit wrong or differently, where it's more so for the longest time, for hundreds, let's say 100 years, if not a little bit longer, we've been working this way. And we've been told this is the traditional way to work. This is how you got to do it, 9 to 5, thanks to Henry Ford. But even before that, it was like 7 days a week or maybe 6 days a week because I think people had it off for like religious reasons. And so, like, we were able to adapt and shift, and I'm sure that there were arguments there too. Now we're at that inflection point, as you mentioned, like how do we incorporate this new way of working without necessarily fully neglecting other people and still making work better for everyone. So that's a good call out there. But I'll get back on topic here. And it's not going to be a good segue, so sorry for the listeners, but
It's okay. We were getting down like a very complex rabbit hole that would take yet again a whole nother long conversation to have. So just push me back to the questions
here we
that
go.
you had prepared.
But this is an example of like if a meeting goes off a little bit, you could just bring it back in on the remote side. But okay, what strategies can organizations implement to ensure that employees have that autonomy to manage their work schedules while still meeting business objectives? So it kind of is still on topic.
Yeah. My answer is going to be somewhat redundant to what we were talking about before our lofty tangent that we just had, which is really they they need to define what they're doing as a company and what that looks like and break it down from lofty goals for 2024 down into the quarterly, monthly, weekly. And so project management strategies across the board is going to be, I think, one of the most important skills moving forward, not just for people calling themselves project managers. And so there needs to be things, again, like a clear KPI. And if it's a more qualitative KPI, what does done look like? And what do you save for V2? How do you know that there's something like scope creep coming into the picture?
Yeah.
At a more like operational standpoint, in terms of the team itself, what are the expectations, if any, around how you're getting the work done? So if you are going to go to the point of having things like a hybrid environment, what are the days in the office? Why are they there? What are they being used for? If you are going to have something like core work hours, what does that look like? I think the biggest kind of soundbite I can give for leaders in this regard is you need to create the swim lanes and then you need to let people swim, but they need to know what lane to be in.
Yeah. It's like setting those boundaries that you're talking about. You're setting clear expectations. You're defining what it means, because if you don't, people have their own interpretation and they're going to do that interpretation. And then whenever it comes to like hiring and firing, if you don't have that clear interpretation, you could get into some legal issues. Not that that's the main reason, but just a side note. But this kind of goes towards a little bit of going back to remote leadership. How has the role of leadership evolved in the context of remote work, and what qualities are crucial for remote leaders to succeed? Because I do think that there is a little bit of a differentiate or a difference between an in-office manager or leader versus a remote leader.
Yeah, I agree that the qualities that you're seeing and the behaviors that you're seeing are different. What's happening with remote work is people are now able to really decentralize what the role of leadership looks like. And I think in a way, this is really beneficial for a remote team because it's creating more of a network effect where you can build, again, that community within your company. And
Hmm.
so, like historically in an office, there was a manager that was, approving your days off or if you had to come in late to the office and all of these things. We've spent a lot of time talking about personal agency and autonomy already in, the short amount of time that we've been talking. And if you work in a remote work environment through the lens of giving people agency, you no longer need a manager to do those things. You need a system to do those things. And that frees up the capability of leadership to focus on things like people, coaching, and mentoring, and what it looks like to really help people thrive in your work environment. Project
Yeah.
management, again, how are you making sure that people are accountable for things? How are you making sure the work is getting done and that stakeholders are being included? More of a strategic leadership then comes into play too. Like, what are the big lofty challenges of what are our goals and how do we get there, which is, something that I've just been saying like ad nauseum today. And finally, more of like a cultural leadership. And I think this can come not just from a traditional manager standpoint, but who are the people that are helping the remote work culture succeed in terms of those small moments. Often,
Mm.
if you have
Yeah.
something like donut buddies installed in your Slack, who are your champions for that? Who are the people in your organization that are leading by example? And how can you make sure that they're being seen by others in the organization? And so when you think of leadership in that way, the qualities and the behaviors to be successful really open up because you don't necessarily need to be successful at all of them. You need to find your niche and then play
Hmm.
to your strengths. And so I think things like that are general for everybody that is important are the skills we've already mentioned. Knowing how to
Hmm.
build trust and navigate relationships with people, even through the discomfort of maybe doing it virtually at first. Setting
Yeah.
clear expectations and documenting them and being able to follow through and follow up are some things that I think are incredibly important. And having like the belief and the growth mindset that it's worth it because it is hard work to be good at remote work. But
Yeah.
I think the
Yeah.
benefits are more important than the trade-offs.
I agree because like as you continue to talk about like project management and clearly defining these things, I can imagine that a lot of leaders, at least the ones that I've worked with, would say like, "Oh, we don't have enough time to do that." But in my opinion, and then I want to get your take, and then we'll go to the lightning round because we're going to run out of time. Um, but like my experience is like we don't have time to do that. But whenever you plan, and you might take like, let's just do an extensive amount, let's say like 8 hours of planning. And now in my experience, now you have like the entire quarter planned out. Like you have your OKRs, your KPIs, your key elements of what you're trying to achieve. And you don't have to, I mean, you do constantly think about it through reminders and all that kind of stuff. But why do you think leaders are opposed to that? And then why do you think they're opposed to remote work
I
sometimes?
think the reason is the same, which is what's happening right now is we have leaders that are in their positions and they have been incredibly successful in their career playing by the rule book of, frankly, at this point, a different generation.
Mm,
And it's really hard to tell someone like I feel the fear and the kind of this pit in your stomach almost of like, oh no, of
mm,
what has gotten me here that I'm so proud of is not going to get me there. And what does that mean for me as a leader and me as a person? Um, that
yeah.
takes someone who is incredibly special in terms of having that level of self-awareness and that recognition that I'm proud of where I am today. I worked really hard, but the world of work is changing and I want to change with it. And so it's going back to that growth mindset.
Mm,
And like I just think that's a little scary to expect for people that are at a certain point in their career. So I do have empathy for the struggle that is change management here.
mm,
And also, I think it's important to make this change because at some point, it's not about you as a leader. It's about your team and it's about your
yeah.
company. And it's about making sure that people can thrive in these work environments so that your company is successful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I won't add anything because we got to go to the lightning round, but that, yeah, 100% agree. I will say, anything that has to do with like change and the fear of unknown, right? It's understandable, but then maybe if we talk again, we could talk about like how do you get them to change. So, but we won't do that right now because we got to go to the lightning round.
Dun,
Are you
dun.
ready?
I'm ready,
I
I
know.
think.
I need to come up with some like tunes in the background for this section. Okay, we'll run through them. So far, these have not been quick on any other episode, so don't feel any pressure. But here we go. All right, coffee or tea for early morning Zoom meetings?
Coffee, always.
Yes. I mean, I do that every
AeroPress for the
time.
win. Not
I do that every
sponsored, but
time.
if AeroPress is listening,
we'll get them to reach out to you
multiple times a day. Are you part of my remote work story?
I like that. We'll do that in the promo. Okay, favorite remote work playlist or music genre?
I mean, I don't have one, but often on YouTube, I search like pop music, but melodies only.
So you don't focus on the words, just the music in the background to get into flow?
Yeah, I'm also a coffee shop worker, and so I just trust the barista to have better musical taste than me. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't.
That is true. I was going to say, like, coffee shops do a pretty good job at that. So, yeah. Sometimes I will put on, like, the deep focus. I have, like, the Zebek, the tri-screen. And so I'll put that on in, like, one ear and then type away. So, not that you asked me, but okay.
I'm always down for music recommendations. So I think there should be, like, a global playlist for remote work songs.
Take that note. Okay, most creative location you've worked remotely?
On the back of my bicycle basket in a park.
Oh man, okay, I was not expecting that. I've never heard that. So, what's the little context behind that?
I wasn't yet a full-time digital nomad, and I had a very beautiful bicycle with this like great wicker basket on the back. And I was feeling like I had too much energy for the day. And so I wanted to go for a bike ride from my house to go work at a coffee shop. And while I was on my bike ride, I got a message from a colleague that just wanted to jump on a call real quick. So I stopped my bike and set up Zoom on the back of the basket.
Nice. I like it. I like it. The perks of remote work. Okay, how do you combat Zoom, MS Team, Google Meet fatigue?
Saying no to meetings that could be asynchronous meetings instead, and also making sure I reconnect with nature whenever possible.
Nice. I like that. I like that. Yeah, 'cause it's so easy to get locked into, because I do like my setup. I'll try to like work from a coffee shop every once in a while or go here and there, but it is so easy just to get like locked into your zone and then forget to go on that walk or forget to take that break. So that's good.
I have a hack. It's like my favorite remote work hack. It's in the book, called One Place, One Goal. So everyone can look out for that.
Oh yeah, now I'm intrigued. You'll have to share something with me whenever you get that. Okay. Okay, I can't even read. Name one unexpected benefit of remote work for you. I don't think you answered that yet.
I mean, like my whole entire life is an unexpected benefit of remote work. Never did I dream that I would be living abroad or having experiences where I went on a safari on the weekend because I was remote working in Africa. I never would have met Tam, my co-author and business partner, if it wasn't for remote work, because we met while we were in Africa.
Oh man.
So everything in my entire life is because of remote work. I have no like specific answer for that.
That's kind of relatable to me because my founding advisor was my old manager at the last position that I work, where we met remotely. And then this kind of goes into a pet peeve because that's the next question. But my pet peeve for remote work is when people say that you can't get promoted in a remote environment. Anyway, what is your remote work pet peeve? What drives you crazy?
When people say that something is remote and then it's not actually fully remote. So getting better at clear definitions and defining work culture. people not being there yet is my biggest pet peeve.
Yeah, I whenever you said that, I was thinking of like a job post that said, this position is remote, but you have to come into the office this amount of days and you have to do this. And it's like,
Exactly.
I don't think so. Okay. Describe your dream virtual team building activity. You could have done it or you haven't done it yet.
Well, now I just kind of want to say that I want that playlist. So like I think music is very telling of people, and it doesn't take any time in a meeting that sucks up, something else that you could be doing to share a favorite song. People can do that on their own time, and you can learn about it. And then in future meetings, you can ask, why is that your favorite song? Does it have the story behind it? So it allows itself for so much more.
I like that. We're gonna have to do that whenever we get like a team, like a full team. We have a development team and all that kind of stuff, but once we get into that swing of things, we're gonna do it because I'm a big music person too.
I am and I'm not, in the sense that I love music, but I love when someone else tells me good music, because off the top of my head, I never remember the names of bands or songs, and then I get very excited when I hear things in the background.
That's true. And the older you get, at least from my experience, because I mean, so I rap. That's a fun fact about me. I'll share some music with you. But so I rap, and like whenever I was growing up, I was always like the newest. I was like, this is dropping this week. I got to listen to it. I got to listen to it. But the older that we get, or at least for me, is like, I might know that one of my favorite artists is dropping, but then I won't stay tuned for like the new artist and anything like that. So I miss a lot of good music. And so having that playlist would be helpful. Yeah, just having those people who keep up with the music send it to us would be helpful.
Yes.
Okay, the last
Both of us are gonna have like LinkedIn DMs with like song suggestions, and it's gonna make me extremely happy.
Yeah, send us your Spotify playlist, your Apple Music playlist. Just send them all our way. Okay, the last one. Share a quick tip for staying motivated while working remotely.
Have a lot of coffee. No, I'm joking.
Yes.
That's not my answer. My trick for staying motivated while working remotely is knowing how to manage your energy. And there's a section of that in the book, and it's my absolute favorite chapter around getting things done. And so if you can figure out what boosts your energy and optimize for it, then you'll be more motivated in your day-to-day.
Yeah, and I think that has to come back to being like present and mindful, because you can get it stuck in the rat race even working remotely. Like, I mean, I'm a workaholic and I proudly say that. Like, people probably hate that word if they're trying to do like work-life balance, but it's all about how you operate. And that's what let's end on what the theme is. That's what I love about remote work is because is because like I can have my way of doing it, you can have your way of doing it, and as long as we get the stuff done, that it's beautiful,
Yeah.
So I don't know, do you want any final words before we close it out?
Just like, yes, there's so many reasons to love remote work. Everything that you've said, I could add so much more to. But like for me, what I'm taking away from this conversation is that if the structure is intentional, then there's room for each person to be unique. And that's what is special. And that is what I love about remote work.
Boom. That's a perfect way to end it. Ali, thank you so much for being a part of Untangled Vines. And if you ever find time, maybe we'll get you back on.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.